Betrayal always lurks where you least expect it, and trust can shatter like fragile glass. Picture a lavish wedding ceremony, glistening chandeliers, a groom waiting with an adoring smile, and a radiant bride walking down the aisle. The only catch: the groom's wife is still alive, pregnant, and about to crash the celebration in a way no one sees coming. In a swirl of secrets, shifting loyalties and hidden agendas, this story isn't just about one moment, it's about everything that led to it. Get ready for a heart-stopping drama, filled with deception, power plays, and the most jaw-dropping twist of all. Michael Donovan was born into privilege, but shackled by pressures he never fully understood. His father, Leonard Donovan, was the founder of Donovan Holdings, a multinational conglomerate with stakes in real estate technology and luxury goods. From a young age, Michael had the best tutors, the finest clothes and invitations to galas, hosting CEOs, politicians, and artists. The future was carved out. For him, he would inherit the family empire, become the figurehead of Donovan Holdings, and continue the legacy his father had so painstakingly built. Yet behind the gold-plated gates and marble floors of the Donovan mansion, Michael rarely found true peace. Even as a boy, he could sense the tension that came from being an only child. Every action of his was scrutinized by tutors, staff, and most of all by Leonard himself. His mother had passed away when Michael was 12, leaving him alone in the labyrinth of wealth and expectation. The burden of carrying the Donovan name grew heavier each year. When Michael was 24, fresh out of Harvard Business School, his father's alma mater, Leonard, set him up for the next logical step in the family plan, an arranged marriage to Penelope Gray, daughter of the well-respected Gray family. The Grays owned a series of successful private hospitals across the United States, and the union promised to unite two formidable dynasties. Penelope was beautiful with sharp green eyes and a gentle demeanor. They met briefly at a corporate fundraiser organized by UNICEF. Their families had orchestrated every detail, believing this alliance would strengthen both of their businesses and unify old family connections dating back generations. Though Michael and Penelope found each other attractive, their relationship was neither deep nor romantic at the start. They were two strangers brought together by wealth, power, and an intricate tapestry of obligations. Still, Penelope had a kind heart. She strove to make their marriage more than just a transaction. As they lived together, she discovered Michael's sensitivity beneath his stoic exterior. He was an introvert who found solace in reading detective novels and classical music. She loved philanthropic work, especially volunteering at children's hospitals. Slowly, they built a fragile bridge of mutual respect and tentative affection. Their wedding was a grand affair. Close to 1,000 guests attended, business tycoons from New York, celebrities from Los Angeles, philanthropic luminaries from London. Even Bill Gates was rumored to have sent a rare book on business strategy as a wedding gift. For a moment, Michael thought he could settle into this new life with Penelope, forging a genuine bond that transcended the business contract. Yet as soon as the honeymoon euphoria faded, reality took hold. He had an empire to manage, and a father who, despite recent signs of failing health, still dominated every business decision. At first, Michael tried to juggle his father's demands, the expectations of the board, and the new responsibilities of being a husband. But the pressure was immense. He found himself drawn into late-night work sessions, overseas conferences, and endless strategic meetings. Penelope, for her part, tried to be understanding, but the distance between them slowly expanded. Then tragedy struck. Leonard. Donovan suffered a severe heart attack. He survived, but was left in a precarious state of health that demanded rest and strict medical attention. He started delegating more and more control of Donovan Holdings to Michael. Under the weight of this abrupt shift, Michael grew increasingly stressed. Penelope was his pillar of emotional support in the beginning, but he pushed her away out of frustration, guilt, and fear of failure. Their once budding closeness was overshadowed by boardroom drama and worry for Leonard's health. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Michael stumbled into a fateful decision that would turn everyone's world upside down. He had hired a new advisor, Elise Carter, a brilliant but fiercely ambitious woman known for her uncanny ability to predict market shifts. At the time, nobody realized she would become the catalyst for a tangled web of secrets. Elise Carter was not born into wealth. She fought tooth and nail for every bit of success she achieved. Raised in a modest household in Detroit, she clawed her way through scholarships and part-time jobs to graduate top of her class at Stanford University. After that, she made her mark at a renowned investment firm, surprising superiors with her talent for analyzing financial markets. Word spread in corporate circles about this brilliant, driven woman, someone who could analyze complex data and offer near-prophetic insights. It wasn't long before Donovan Holdings headhunted her to be Michael's personal financial advisor. From the moment Elise stepped into Donovan Tower, she commanded attention. She had an air of self-confidence that both intrigued and intimidated those around her. She was tall, poised, with a voice that hinted at unwavering conviction. Elise did not hide her ambitions. If anything, she wore them like a badge of honor. Michael initially respected Elise's acumen. He found in her an ally who shared his drive to excel and expand Donovan Holdings' influence. Elise's ideas were fresh. She suggested exploring renewable energy opportunities in the Middle East and investing in cutting-edge biotech startups. As Michael was grappling with the heightened responsibilities left by his father's illness, Elise quickly positioned herself as indispensable. Late nights in the boardroom, strategy discussions that bled into dinner meetings and overseas trips where they had to attend crucial summits together. All these forged a strong rapport between them. But the line between professional respect and personal attraction can blur in high-pressure environments. Michael found himself drawn to Elise's confidence and how effortlessly she seemed to navigate the high-stakes corporate world. She was different from Penelope, who, despite her caring nature, sometimes shrank from the cutthroat realities of business. Penelope was kind, yes, but she lived for charitable causes and quiet companionship. Elise, on the other hand, matched Michael's hunger for business success, feeding his adrenaline with each new venture. It started innocently enough. Elise would ask if Michael wanted to grab coffee after a meeting. Then she'd share personal stories about her upbringing, how she was always told she'd never make it in a world dominated by old money. Michael admired her fighting spirit. Late night after late night, they lingered over conversation that slid from corporate to personal. An electric tension formed, unspoken but undeniable. One evening, they were working on a proposal to partner with a major Saudi Arabian investment fund. As hours ticked by, documents were strewn across the conference table, laptops flickering, the city lights shimmering through the glass walls. Michael rubbed his eyes, exhausted. Elise placed a hand on his shoulder. "Take a break," she said softly, her usually firm voice gentler than usual. "We'll think clearer if we rest for a moment." Her touch lingered. In that silence, Michael felt something shift. They locked eyes. Elise had a look that was both compassionate and fiercely determined. In that moment, it seemed that the entire future hinged on a single choice to step back or step closer. Michael was the first to break the tension, by muttering a half-baked excuse to get some air. But that night, he went home, filled with guilt. Penelope was asleep when he arrived, a half-read novel about pediatric care slipping from her hands. He stood at the doorway to their bedroom, quietly wrestling with his disloyal thoughts. He convinced himself that his attraction to Elise was temporary, a manifestation of the stress he was under. The next morning, he resolved to keep things strictly professional. Yet the pull toward Elise only grew stronger. She was cunning enough to sense his inner conflict and feed into his needs, be it professional validation or emotional relief. Over time, the boundaries eroded. They shared passionate looks that turned into clandestine dinners, then stolen weekends under the guise of international business trips. While Penelope dutifully tended to Leonard, ensuring he received proper medical care, Michael found excuses to travel abroad with Elise. It was the classic story. Michael told himself it was harmless, that he had everything under control. Elise convinced him to keep it secret for the sake of business. They couldn't afford any scandal. In reality, Elise intended to gain more than just his affection. She saw a pathway to power that only Michael, as heir to Donovan Holdings, could provide. Thus began an affair built on illusions and betrayal. Michael never intended to divorce Penelope, but he was addicted to the thrill Elise provided. Penelope, who was also dealing with her own insecurities and secret battles, suspected something was off, but couldn't pinpoint it. She was preoccupied with her father-in-law's failing health and her philanthropic work. Little did she know her world was about to fall apart in ways she could never have imagined. Penelope's life revolved around quietly ensuring the well-being of those she cared about. As Leonard Donovan's health rapidly declined, she took it upon herself to work closely with his team of doctors and arrange the best facilities for his treatment. She even leveraged her connections from the Gray family's hospital networks to bring in specialists with global reputations. In the chaos of board meetings, medical appointments, and Michael's increasingly distant behavior, Penelope forgot something crucial. She forgot to watch out for herself. When she first noticed Michael's absences, she chalked it up to corporate responsibilities. The man was basically running Donovan Holdings alone, while Leonard was incapacitated. Penelope tried to be understanding. She knew the empire demanded everything from him, just as her own father's business had consumed her childhood. She called Michael's office, sometimes wanting to hear his voice. On many of those occasions, Elise answered, stating that Michael was occupied with an urgent matter or in a meeting that couldn't be interrupted. It wasn't until Penelope found a lipstick-stained coffee cup in Michael's private study that her suspicions intensified. Who else had been there alone with her husband late at night? Confronted with the possibility of an affair, she was torn between denial and heartbreak. She decided to stay silent for a while, hoping that any momentary lapse of judgment on Michael's part would pass. She believed in her marriage vows, in the sanctity of their bond. Even if it was arranged, she had come to genuinely care for him. Simultaneously, Penelope began to feel unwell. She was more tired than usual, and certain smells like the disinfectant in the hospital hallways made her nauseous. She assumed it was stress, a reaction to the emotional and physical toll of caring for Leonard. Weeks went by, and a suspicion tugged at her mind. Finally, she decided to see a doctor from her family's hospital. The results were shocking. Penelope was pregnant. Though overjoyed at the thought of a baby, she also felt a rising tide of panic. What if the rumors were true? What if Michael was with another woman? How would a baby fit into an already fractured marriage? She wrestled with these questions alone in the hush of her bedroom. Her father, Quentin Gray, a reserved man with a focus on hospital expansions, would be both elated and worried if he found out. Given the condition of Michael and Penelope's relationship, she decided to wait before making any announcement. That wait, however, stretched longer than anticipated because of a startling turn of events. One morning, Penelope noticed that Leonard's health was deteriorating faster than expected. He seemed to slip into incoherence. Concerned, she sought a second opinion. The doctors confirmed her worst fears. The stress of running Donovan Holdings through Michael, coupled with the strain of his own regrets and unspoken burdens, was hastening Leonard's decline. They recommended a long rest at a specialized rehabilitation facility in Switzerland. Penelope made the arrangements quietly. Leonard was whisked away in a private medical flight. Michael was already abroad on business, ostensibly in Dubai, for a high-stakes meeting, but likely accompanied by Elise. Penelope's messages to her husband went unanswered for days. In his absence, she took on the responsibility of ensuring Leonard's smooth transfer to the Swiss facility. She rarely ate, rarely slept, waiting for Michael to return to share the news of her pregnancy to figure out how to rebuild their marriage. But he didn't return calls, or if he did, it was short, curt, and overshadowed by urgent business matters. In this fragile state, Penelope decided to leave the Donovan mansion temporarily for some time alone. She packed a small bag and slipped out in the early morning, heading to a secluded property owned by her side of the family, a lakeside cabin in the Adirondacks. She needed to think, to reflect on whether she should confront Michael or even consider leaving him if the rumors of infidelity proved true. Deep down, she still hoped for reconciliation, but fear was beginning to drown her optimism. No one from the Donovan household knew where she was. She left a cryptic note to the housekeeper, saying she needed a short break to clear her head. And that was it. She vanished from Michael's world at the moment when communication was most crucial. Over time, her phone died. She forgot her charger in her haste. In the silence of the lake, Penelope felt strangely liberated. For the first time in ages, there was no corporate crisis, no father-in-law's medical emergency, and no unsolved questions about her husband's fidelity, at least not within immediate reach. Days turned into weeks. What Penelope didn't know was that her body was undergoing changes far more dramatic than she realized. The pregnancy wasn't just a single baby. She was carrying triplets. This complication began to manifest in sudden dizziness and an unexpected fainting spell by the lakeshore. Penelope's housekeeper, alarmed by her sudden disappearance and lack of contact, eventually reached out to the Gray family, who then initiated a private search. She was found barely conscious in the cabin, and paramedics rushed her to the nearest hospital. By the time Penelope stabilized, the doctors discovered the triplets and recommended specialized prenatal care. With her stress levels so high, the pregnancy was high risk. In the chaos of it all, Penelope lost track of everything that was happening with the Donovans. She didn't know that Michael had kept up appearances of a stable marriage in front of the media. She didn't know that Elise was weaving her web tighter around him. And crucially, she didn't realize that her absence provided the perfect cover for the biggest betrayal, yet a secret wedding. Weeks passed, and Michael's guilt over his affair with Elise morphed into a distorted form of acceptance. Part of him believed that Penelope had abandoned him when she left without notice. There was no explanation, no phone call. He had no idea she was battling health issues, much less pregnant. Elise used Penelope's absence to her advantage, discreetly seeding doubts in Michael's mind. "She was never truly invested in your struggles," Elise would say. "She vanished when the going got tough." Michael, blindsided by hurt and pride, chose to believe Elise's narrative instead of digging deeper. Meanwhile, with Leonard gone to Switzerland and Penelope nowhere to be found, the Donovan board members and shareholders grew restless. They needed stability at the helm. Elise aware of this whispered, subtle suggestions to Michael. The board might feel more confident if you appeared settled. The media's starting to speculate about your wife's disappearance. A new marriage, a fresh start, could quell rumors. It was a radical idea, but Michael, vulnerable and emotionally frayed, entertained it. Despite the unorthodox circumstances, Elise was persuasive. She pointed out that Penelope had vacated the Donovan mansion, and that no one, not even her family, seemed to know her whereabouts. In truth, the Gray family had tried to contact Michael, but Elise intercepted calls and messages, feeding him only selective information. She painted a picture in which Penelope's leaving was final, that she had run away, because she couldn't handle the pressure. Michael, angry and convinced he'd been deserted, allowed this narrative to fester. Elise enlisted the help of her own network, a private officiant willing to conduct a discreet ceremony, a luxury resort outside the country, specifically in Greece, where paparazzi were less likely to pry. Elise even coordinated a handful of the Donovan Holdings executives who were sympathetic to her cause or wanted to curry favor with the new power couple to be their witnesses. In an insane twist, Michael rationalized that a quick, quiet wedding was the best route to stabilize Donovan Holdings' image. He had convinced himself that Penelope was gone for good. On a balmy afternoon, overlooking the sparkling waters of Mykonos, Michael stood at the resort's makeshift altar. Elise wore a sleek, white designer gown. Only a small cluster of guests attended, most under confidentiality agreements. The officiant recited the vows, and each word felt like a dagger twisting deeper into the memory of Michael's first marriage. Yet he pressed on his emotions, clouded by anger, betrayal, and Elise's influence. When he slipped the ring onto Elise's finger, it was done. Michael Donovan was now a bigamist. The wedding night was lavish. A private dinner on the beach, fireworks lighting up the sky, champagne poured into crystal flutes. Elise played the part of the triumphant bride, ignoring the fact that on paper her union might not even be legally valid. Michael, slightly inebriated, allowed himself a fleeting moment of relief, as though he'd outrun his personal demons. They danced under the moonlight, each step carrying him further from the life he once shared with Penelope. In the midst of the revelry, Elise pulled Michael aside and confided in him that she had negotiated a crucial business deal with a tech mogul named Aaron Johnson, a real-life power player in Silicon Valley, who was rumored to be the brains behind multiple AI startups. If Donovan Holdings could secure Johnson's latest project, it would mean billions in future investments. Elise insisted that they meet him in Hong Kong the following week, sealing the deal that would cement Donovan Holdings at the forefront of cutting-edge technology. Drunk on the euphoria of a new beginning, Michael agreed without hesitation. Maybe Elise was right. This was a fresh start, a chance to break from the burdensome past. A wave of determination flooded him. He would take Donovan Holdings to new heights, show the board he was a leader, and prove that he didn't need anyone who abandoned him. In that surge of self-righteous conviction, Penelope became little more than a memory, an inconvenient chapter of his life he was prepared to close. Little did he know that Penelope's absence was never her choice, that she was alone in a hospital, fighting for her health and the health of their unborn children. As Michael prepared for a flight to Hong Kong with his new wife, fate was setting the stage for a shocking turn of events that would soon come crashing down on them. A swirl of coincidences, hidden loyalties, and a certain company seal still under Penelope's control would soon rewrite all their lives. Donovan Holdings was in chaos behind the corporate facade. Rumors circulated among employees that something was amiss at the top. Why had Penelope vanished? Why had Michael traveled repeatedly to far-off locations? And why did Elise Carter, once just an advisor, now walk the halls like she was the new queen? Most employees avoided open speculation for fear of repercussions, but gossip thrived in hushed corners of the cafeteria, in quick glances at passing executives, and in water-cooler whispers. Board members, particularly the older ones who had been loyal to Leonard, were troubled. While Michael held the position of CEO, Leonard had always safeguarded final authority through a special clause in the corporation's bylaws. This clause stated that the official Donovan Holdings seal, an antique signet ring, custom-made for the original founder, was required to validate certain major decisions, especially those involving mergers, acquisitions, or large-scale investments. The board could not proceed with major deals without that seal being stamped on official documents, and that seal was missing. It had been in Leonard's possession up until his sudden departure to Switzerland, but according to the staff at the Donovan mansion, Penelope had been the last person seen with it, making sure it was safely stored. Why had Penelope taken it? No one had an answer. In her absence, key decisions were on hold, hampering day-to-day operations. Michael tried to push forward anyway, but whenever he tried to finalize a deal, he was asked about the official seal. He would bristle and dismiss the question, claiming it would turn up soon. Elise, too, tried to reassure the board that everything was under control. But anxiety was mounting Donovan. Holdings was hemorrhaging money on stalled projects. Competitors, aware of their internal issues, were circling like sharks, waiting to snatch away valuable contracts. Michael was fuming. Each time he demanded an update on the seal, Elise tried to calm him, saying that once they got the new investment from Aaron Johnson, the board wouldn't dare question their authority. But deep down, Michael knew the seal was more than a mere artifact. It symbolized legitimacy in the eyes of the old guard, who still revered Leonard's legacy. Without it, Michael's position was precarious, and behind closed doors, some board members even whispered about challenging Michael's leadership if he couldn't produce that seal soon. Amid this turmoil, Elise cunningly positioned herself as Michael's protector. She managed communications with the PR team, carefully crafting messages about Penelope's extended trip to see her relatives, while ensuring no one could reach the Gray family directly. She also isolated Michael from potential allies, ensuring only her version of events was repeated back to him. Publicly, she made subtle appearances as Michael's new partner, but not so openly as to invite scandalous headlines. She wanted to usurp power, but carefully enough to avoid a backlash from the conservative board members who still expected a respectable CEO and a stable family image. Meanwhile, Penelope's father, Quentin Gray, grew increasingly suspicious. Why had no one from Donovan Holdings acknowledged Penelope's condition or sent well wishes? Where was Michael? Despite repeated attempts to contact the Donovans, all he got was stonewalling by unknown staff. Finally, he decided to handle matters himself. He reached out to his own network, which included private investigators and trusted friends in corporate circles. A few discreet inquiries revealed a disturbing pattern of Michael's overseas trips and Elise's growing influence. Alarmed, Quentin planned to make a public statement exposing the truth if Michael didn't respond. Just as tensions reached a boiling point, news broke that Michael and Elise were attending a high-profile tech conference in Hong Kong to sign a deal with Aaron Johnson's group. The entire Donovan board tuned in to watch the live-streamed panel discussion, hoping to see some semblance of leadership from Michael. Instead, they saw him appear flustered when a journalist asked about Penelope's whereabouts. Elise smoothly intervened, offering a canned response about Penelope being busy with charitable commitments. To make matters worse, the deal they were there to seal could not be finalized because the Donovan seal was required on the official contract. In front of cameras and an international audience, Johnson's legal team politely insisted on proper formalities. Michael hemmed and hawed, trying to delay. But the damage was done. People smelled blood in the water. If Donovan Holdings couldn't produce the sign of their patriarch's blessing, what else were they missing? Elise covered for him as best as she could, promising that the seal would be provided once they returned to the US. The conference ended on an awkward note with no contract signed. Over dinner, Michael raged about the humiliating turn of events. Elise assured him they would come up with a plan, but doubt shimmered in her eyes. She knew that without Penelope or the seal, her elaborate scheme to control Donovan Holdings was teetering. Yet neither she nor Michael had any idea that Penelope's health crisis was stabilizing and that she was preparing for a grand return. When Penelope discovered the extent of Michael's deception, it wouldn't just be her heartbreak fueling her actions. It would be her maternal instinct to protect her unborn children and preserve Leonard's legacy. Penelope awoke in a hospital suite in Manhattan, surrounded by warmth and the constant hum of medical machinery. She blinked disoriented at first, until memory seeped back the lakeside cabin. Her dizziness, the eventual rescue by the Gray family's private search team. Gradually she turned her head to see her father, Quentin, sitting in a chair beside her bed, his face etched with relief and worry. "Where am I?" she managed, her voice ragged from lack of use. "At Gray Memorial Hospital," Quentin replied softly, standing to hold her hand. "You passed out. We found you just in time." Slowly the doctors and nurses filled in the gaps. Penelope was pregnant with triplets. The high-risk nature of the pregnancy, coupled with extreme stress and insufficient rest, had led to fainting spells and complications. Fortunately, they had intervened in time. She still required close monitoring, but her condition was stable enough for her to remain conscious and coherent. Over the next few days, Penelope focused on healing. She received intravenous nutrients, carefully prepared meals, and moral support from her father and a few trusted friends. Notably, absent from her bedside was Michael. She could hardly believe he hadn't contacted her, especially after hearing about her hospitalization. Concern turned into a crushing sense of betrayal. Although she had left the mansion abruptly, she assumed Michael would have been informed by someone if he cared. It was Quentin who broke the news about Michael's affair. Penelope listened in stunned silence as her father described how the Gray family's discreet investigation revealed intimate photos of Michael and Elisa in Mykonos, swirling speculation about a secret wedding and the ongoing corporate meltdown at Donovan Holdings due to the missing seal. For a moment, Penelope couldn't breathe, every nerve ending aflame with shock and heartbreak. She had suspected Michael of straying, but a wedding. Her first thought was of the children growing inside her. She felt a fierce protectiveness welling up. This wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. It was a direct threat to her unborn baby's future and their rightful claim to the Donovan legacy. She also thought of Leonard in Switzerland recuperating. How would he react if he knew his own son had committed such a blatant act of dishonor? Penelope swallowed her tears, bracing herself for the fight she knew lay ahead. It was then that she recalled the old signet ring, the Donovan seal. Leonard had entrusted it to her just before leaving for Switzerland, insisting she safeguard it until Michael found his way. At the time, Penelope hadn't fully understood its significance. Now she realized it was a powerful key, not just a family heirloom, but a linchpin of corporate authority. Penelope vowed to keep it hidden until she could confront Michael about his actions and ensure the board understood what was happening. With her father's support, she set a plan in motion. She'd remain in the hospital for another week under tight security. She'd build her strength consult with specialists to manage her pregnancy and coordinate with a hand-picked legal team. Quentin had connections in New York's elite law circles, people known for their discretion and loyalty to the Gray family. A press conference was possible, but she needed to tread carefully. The wrong move could destabilize Donovan Holdings even further and tarnish the Gray family name. Each day, Penelope's resolve hardened. Her heartbreak over Michael twisted into a cold determination to protect her children and Leonard's legacy. She understood now that Elise wasn't merely a fling. She was a threat of epic proportions, a cunning opportunist who had manipulated Michael to her side. Still, Penelope was not one to wallow. She summoned the best maternal instincts she had, rallying her physical and emotional strength. Meanwhile, her father kept feeding her updates, how the Donovan board was up in arms, how Michael's big deal in Hong Kong stalled, how various tabloids were sniffing around for stories. Penelope realized that if she returned with no evidence or strategy, Michael and Elise could spin any narrative they wanted. This time she would not be blindsided. In the quiet hours of the evening, Penelope would rest her hands on her belly, feeling the faint fluttering of life within. She whispered promises to her unborn babies about the world she would provide for them, a world free from the treacherous manipulations of Elise Carter. She also prayed for Leonard's health, hoping he'd recover enough to see the family united once more under a banner of integrity, not deceit. As days passed, Penelope's condition improved. The doctors deemed her stable enough to leave in a few days' time, with the caveat that she continue to avoid high stress. Penelope merely smiled at that suggestion. Stress was inevitable, given the storm waiting for her beyond these walls. Yet she felt a growing fire in her heart. She had the company seal the rightful claim as Michael's wife and 3 unborn children who deserved the Donovan name. She would return, and when she did, no one would stand in her way. In Hong Kong, the trip that was supposed to secure Donovan Holdings' future turned into a quagmire of delays and anxiety. Michael had extended the trip under the pretense of salvaging the deal with Aaron Johnson, but every meeting ended the same way. Johnson's legal advisors requested the Donovan seal, and Michael tried to stall. Elise, sensing the walls closing in, spent her days scrambling between negotiations, phone calls to the board back home, and attempts to keep the media from unearthing their secret nuptials. The strain on their relationship was palpable. The once thrilling affair lost its luster in the face of looming catastrophe. In an upscale suite on the top floor of the Peninsula Hotel, Michael slammed his laptop shut after another disappointing Zoom call with the Donovan board. His hair was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. Elise paced the suite's plush carpet phone, in hand, scanning the latest news feeds for any leaks about Penelope or the missing seal. "I can't believe this is happening," Michael fumed. "The board is practically threatening to invoke a clause to remove me as CEO if I don't produce that damned seal." Where the hell did Penelope go? Elise's lips tightened. She resented that, even in her moment of triumph, Penelope's name still loomed large. "I'm doing everything I can," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "We've checked with everyone in her social circle, her charities, even those snobby clubs she used to frequent." No sign of her. Michael glared out the window at the glittering Hong Kong skyline. "You said she ran off, that she couldn't handle the pressure." "Maybe she's with the Gray family in some fancy estate in Europe." Elise felt a twinge of panic. The Gray family's resources were vast, and if they were protecting Penelope, there was little Elise could do from across the world. Before she could reply, Michael's phone buzzed. He snatched it off the coffee table. The caller was one of the senior board members, James Muller, an old friend of Leonard Donovan. James's voice crackled over the speaker. "Michael, I hate to bother you, but we have a problem. Well, another problem. Quentin Gray has made contact with the board. He claims Penelope is in New York, alive and well, and she wants to address the board in person." Michael's heart pounded. "She's alive and well. What is she playing at? Why hasn't she called me?" James hesitated. "She's requested an urgent board meeting. She says she has crucial information about the future of Donovan Holdings. She also mentioned she's in possession of the family seal." A wave of confusion and anger swept over Michael. So Penelope had the seal all this time, Elise's nails dug into her palms. This was the worst-case scenario. If Penelope reappeared with the seal, Michael's entire house of cards could topple. The secret wedding would come under scrutiny. The board might question his judgment. And worse, if Penelope chose to go public about his betrayal, Donovan Holdings could lose face in front of investors. Michael ended the call, his mind racing. Elise searched his expression, trying to gauge the level of crisis. "What did he say?" she asked, voice tense. "Penelope's apparently coming back," Michael replied, eyes dark and brooding. "And she has the seal." They stood there for a long moment, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. "Elise, always the strategist," broke the silence first. "We need to get ahead of this. If Penelope shows up at the board meeting, we have to paint her as unstable or manipulative. We say she stole the seal. We show your new marriage as legitimate. You have to come off as the victim." Michael clenched his jaw. Part of him balked at the idea of publicly smearing Penelope. They had shared a life, even if it was arranged at first. Yet Elise's logic was ruthless but sound from a purely tactical standpoint. The board meeting would be a battlefield, and they needed to prepare their defense or risk annihilation. He rubbed his temples. "Fine. But we need to return to New York immediately." Elise nodded, her posture firm, as she began texting their travel agent. "We'll leave tomorrow morning on the earliest flight. I'll arrange a press release that you're cutting the trip short for urgent family matters. That should keep speculation at bay for at least a few days." Michael sank onto the sofa. His thoughts drifted to Penelope. Why had she vanished? Why had she reappeared now? And if she truly had the seal, what else did she plan to do with it? Part of him felt guilty. Was she in trouble all this time, while he assumed the worst of her? But the guilt was quickly swallowed by apprehension over the looming confrontation. He had made choices he couldn't take back, locked himself in a marriage to Elise. Perhaps he was too far gone. Outside, the neon lights flickered in the Hong Kong night, as though mocking the illusions he had built around himself. The storm clouds were gathering, and they would soon break over New York in a downpour of secrets, lies, and harsh truths. Penelope arrived at Donovan Tower in a sleek black sedan, accompanied by Quentin Gray and two of his trusted lawyers. Though her steps were measured and calm, her heart thundered with anticipation. She wore a simple yet elegant navy blue maternity dress that revealed the gentle curve of her belly, a silent testament to the life growing within her. Clutched in her right hand was a small velvet pouch containing the Donovan seal, the symbol that the entire corporation was desperately seeking. Outside the tower, curious onlookers and reporters clustered hungry for a scoop. Questions rang out about her disappearance and rumored pregnancy, but she ignored them, ducking into the building with determined grace. The boardroom was already buzzing with tension. Penelope could hear murmurs inside her name, the seal the possible scandal. She drew a deep breath before stepping in. All eyes shifted to her as she entered. She felt a mix of sympathetic, curious, and wary gazes from the directors. At the head of the table sat Michael, rigid as a statue, with Elise standing protectively behind him. Seeing Elise in the boardroom was jarring, but Penelope steeled herself. She had mentally rehearsed this moment a dozen times. Penelope Michael managed rising to his feet. His voice held a tremor of conflicting emotions. Anger, relief, maybe even guilt. Elise's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable, yet hostile. Penelope inclined her head politely at Michael before addressing the board. "Thank you all for allowing me to speak today. I know my abrupt absence caused confusion. I regret any strain it placed on Donovan Holdings." James Muller, the senior board member who had informed Michael of Penelope's return, welcomed her. "We're grateful you're here. The company has been at an impasse waiting for that seal. And of course, your explanation." Penelope glanced at Michael and Elise, summoning her courage. "I've been under medical care for the past few weeks," she began, her tone steady. "During that time, I discovered I was pregnant. With triplets." The board members exchanged startled looks. Michael paled, while Elise's composure visibly faltered. Penelope continued. "Before Leonard left for Switzerland, he entrusted me with the Donovan seal. He wanted me to protect it until Michael was ready to assume his responsibilities with integrity. He was worried about undue influences that might steer Michael away from his true path." She paused for effect, letting her gaze rest on Elise. The message was clear. Elise took a step forward, her voice sharper than she intended. "Is there a point to this story?" "We've waited weeks." Penelope cut her off. "I'm not done, Elise." The quiet authority in Penelope's tone was like a slap to the face. Elise froze, stunned by Penelope's newfound assertiveness. Quentin Gray spoke up, his gravitas filling the room. "Donovan Holdings is a cornerstone of American industry. My daughter has acted according to Leonard Donovan's wishes. Today she has returned to ensure the rightful stewardship of the company." Michael cleared his throat. "And what exactly does that mean?" Penelope. His eyes flicked to her belly, then back to her face. "Why didn't you contact me? Why keep the seal hidden?" She looked at him, sorrow mixed with disappointment. "I did try at first, but every attempt to communicate was blocked or intercepted. I have proof of calls to your office that never reached you, emails that bounced back. I thought you'd deserted me, Michael, until I found out the truth about your relationship with Elise." A hush settled over the room, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. Elise visibly bristled. "We don't need to discuss personal matters in a business setting." The board. Penelope raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Let's not fool ourselves. The personal and the professional are deeply intertwined here. If this was just an affair, that would be one thing. But you manipulated corporate decisions, withheld crucial information, and jeopardized contracts. And now there's the matter of a secret marriage." A collective gasp went around the table. Several board members exchanged alarmed glances. Elise's eyes flared, but she couldn't deny it. She and Michael had no official license recognized in the state. They had tried to keep the ceremony in Mykonos under wraps, but rumors had leaked. One of the board members, an older woman named Bella Chang, spoke up. "Is this true? Michael, did you marry Elise without finalizing your existing marriage to Penelope?" Michael's shoulders slumped under the barrage of scrutiny. He had no defense except a vague attempt to excuse his actions. Penelope left me, and there was pressure. I was told she'd abandoned her position, that the board needed stability. And you believed that Penelope's voice quivered with hurt. You didn't even try to find me to talk to my father to question Elise's narratives. Michael looked lost, trapped in a web he helped create. Elise tried to salvage the situation. We can work through any misunderstandings, but as far as the board is concerned, we need that seal to finalize the partnership with Aaron Johnson. Penelope pulled the velvet pouch from her handbag, holding it up. The glint of the antique signet ring caught the fluorescent light. Here it is, the Donovan seal. She set it on the table carefully. I'm willing to provide it under one condition, that we protect Leonard's wishes and that any further leadership arrangement of this company respects my rights as Michael's legitimate wife. A wave of murmurs crossed the room. Bella Chang nodded in agreement, her respect for Penelope's stance evident. James Muller cleared his throat. What do you propose? Mrs. Donovan. Penelope met the eyes of each board member one by one. Until Leonard recovers fully, I suggest that any major decision, including finalizing deals like the one with Aaron Johnson, must require signatures from both Michael and me. I will remain listed as a co-trustee of the Donovan estate. If Michael wishes to salvage his position here, he must acknowledge me and our children publicly as part of the Donovan family. Elise flinched, as if struck. Michael stared at Penelope in conflicted silence. He knew the board would likely support Penelope's demand. She was carrying the heirs to the Donovan legacy after all, and had the seal. Despite everything, Michael felt a strange relief. Part of him wanted a way out of the corner he'd boxed himself into. One of the lawyers accompanying Penelope stood. We've prepared documents that formalize this arrangement. We ask for a vote from the board. If approved, we can proceed with finalizing any pending deals. All eyes turned to Michael. Defeated, he picked up a pen. Fine, he said quietly. Let's vote. The board's decision was swift. Penelope and Michael would co-lead Donovan Holdings, and Michael was to publicly reaffirm Penelope as his wife and the mother of his unborn children. Elise stood frozen rage, simmering beneath her calm facade. After months of scheming, she'd lost everything in a single meeting. To steady the ship and pacify investors, a press conference was arranged. Penelope meticulously prepared, choosing a tailored white suit that complemented her growing belly. She rehearsed her speech, determined to strike the perfect tone between strength and diplomacy. On the morning of the event, she and Michael shared a car ride for the first time in months. Michael broke the silence. Penelope, I'm sorry. For everything. She cut him off gently, eyes fixed on the passing city. We'll talk later. Let's focus on the company first. Arriving at Donovan Tower, cameras flashed wildly as they stepped out. Reporters shouted questions, but security quickly ushered them inside. The atrium buzzed with anticipation, executives and journalists watching closely. At the podium, Penelope began with poise. I'm Penelope Gray Donovan. I'm here to address recent speculation regarding Donovan Holdings. Let me begin by saying my husband and I are united in our dedication to this company's future. Leonard Donovan remains in recovery, and we continue to honor his legacy. She paused, then delivered the headline. During my absence, I learned I was pregnant with triplets. A murmur rippled through the room, cameras erupting again. I required medical care and rest. Now I'm back and ready to resume my role in guiding this company forward. Michael stepped in beside her. I'm grateful Penelope is safe. We are committed to Donovan Holdings together." His voice was steady, his hand on her shoulder, a carefully choreographed show of unity. The crowd relaxed until a journalist raised a pointed question. "Donovan, can you confirm the rumored wedding in Greece with Elise Carter?" Tension crackled in the air. Elise, standing in the shadows, stiffened. Michael swallowed. "There was a private event overseas, but it has no legal standing. My wife is Penelope Gray Donovan. I regret any confusion." Penelope's expression didn't flinch, but her silence spoke volumes. "To conclude," she said firmly, reclaiming the mic, "we thank you for your support. Donovan Holdings will continue pushing forward with strength, innovation, and integrity." As the press conference wrapped up, Michael and Penelope exited swiftly, reporters trailing behind. Elise lingered near the side entrance, barely noticed. Her reputation was in ruins, but she wasn't finished. She still had access to confidential documents, and if she couldn't have the company, she would make sure to take a piece of it with her. Meanwhile, Penelope walked down the tower steps with one hand on her belly, shielding her unborn children from the storm around them. Her mind raced with uncertainty. Michael had publicly acknowledged her, but could she ever trust him again? Was he truly remorseful, or just trying to save face? The spotlight faded behind her, but Penelope's mission was only beginning. As she whispered to her unborn children, "I'll protect us no matter what," she knew this was far from over. In the days after the press conference, Donovan Holdings stabilized. Investors relaxed, the board aligned behind Penelope and Michael, and public confidence returned. But inside the Donovan mansion, tensions lingered. Penelope moved back, but not into Michael's bedroom. She focused on her health and the babies. Michael, weighed down by guilt, kept his distance. Elise, stripped of her influence, remained in a peripheral office. Few realized how dangerous her desperation had become. One evening, Penelope was finishing a call with her father when Michael knocked on her study door. He looked unsure, holding a folder. "It's about us and the company," he said. "These are letters from my father. He said if I lost my way, the seal should stay with you. He trusted you." Penelope's voice was calm but firm. He was right to. Michael's shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry, Penelope. I didn't know you were in danger. Elise shut you out, and I let her." "You believed her lies without question," Penelope replied. "I nearly lost our children. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness." Before she could respond, a crash echoed from the hallway. They rushed out to find Elise near the front door, security guards holding her by the arms. She clutched a black leather bag like it contained her soul. "What's going on?" Michael demanded. "She was trying to leave with confidential company files," a guard explained. "Let me go," Elise snarled. "You think you can humiliate me and toss me aside? I made Michael into a leader. I deserve more than this." Michael stepped forward. "You manipulated me, lied, used me. I'll leak everything," Elise spat. "Your father's deals, your internal memos. Pay me what I'm worth, or I'll destroy this company." Penelope stepped in steady despite the turmoil. "You're threatening blackmail, Elise. That alone will bury you." "You think I won't do it?" Elise hissed. A guard swiftly seized the bag. Inside were USB drives, printed communications, and documents tied to sensitive negotiations. Penelope handed them back to security. "Call the police. She's leaving with stolen property." Elise's confidence cracked. "Michael, don't let them arrest me. You know I never meant to." Michael's jaw tightened. "You made your choice." As the guards escorted Elise out, Her screams echoed down the marble hallway. Penelope slumped into a chair, shaking. Michael knelt beside her, concern etched on his face. "You okay?" She nodded, breath shallow. "Yes. But it's over. Finally." Michael exhaled slowly. For good this time. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't grip back either. Outside, the storm had passed, but a long road still lay ahead. And so, with Elise Carter taken away in handcuffs and the Donovan seal finally back where it belonged, Michael and Penelope emerged to rebuild what had been broken. Their journey forward wouldn't be free of heartache or challenge, but it would be built on truth and renewed commitment, a vow far stronger than any secret ceremony could ever be. With the Donovan legacy secured and 3 babies on the way, their story stands as a reminder that love, loyalty, and integrity can withstand even the most devastating betrayals. If you've been hooked by this tale of power, betrayal, and redemption, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. Your support helps us continue unearthing dramatic real-life sagas that keep you on the edge of your seat. Secrets have a way of coming to light at the worst possible moment. Imagine a crowded baby shower filled with pink and blue balloons, tables overflowing with cupcakes, and a room full of guests snapping photos of a glowing mother-to-be. But then shouting erupts near the gift table. You see a furious husband confronting his very pregnant wife, who shouldn't even be there. In the blink of an eye, he pushes her backward, sending everyone into shocked silence. That's just the beginning. Little does he know when they all meet again in court, the next week 2 new lives, and one devastating truth will redefine everything. Carter Dawson and Alicia Marshall met the way so many modern couples do at a networking event in downtown Los Angeles. Alicia worked in interior design, a field that allowed her to merge her creative impulses with a savvy business mind. Carter was fresh out of law school and raring to climb the legal ladder in his father's boutique law firm. They were both young, optimistic, and so certain that love would conquer all. When they first locked eyes over a tray of hors d'oeuvres, conversation flowed effortlessly. Alicia felt a spark of excitement that she hadn't felt in a long time. Carter, with his quick wit and confident posture, seemed to fill a void she didn't even know she had. The two began dating, and within 6 months, they were practically inseparable. For her, Carter was a man who took charge, but balanced it with enough charm to make it feel romantic. For him, Alicia was the kind of woman who lit up a room. She had a buoyant spirit and a fierce loyalty he found irresistible. It didn't take long for them to have the talk about marriage, children, and building a life together. Yet from the start, there were subtle warning signs. Carter was ambitious, so ambitious that at times he neglected Alicia's emotional needs in favor of professional goals. He'd stay late at the office, leaving her alone in their stylish downtown apartment. She would text him good-night messages that often went unread until morning. He justified it by saying, "I'm working for our future," and Alicia, enamored and hopeful, believed him. They got married in a lavish ceremony, attended by Los Angeles' social elite. Friends flew in from all over the country. Even Lucy Walters, an old friend of Alicia's from her hometown in Ohio, made the trip to celebrate the union. Lucy was the kind of friend who kept Alicia grounded, always ready with a heart-warming reminder that love should never feel lonely, even in marriage. Lucy also noticed Carter's occasional aloofness, but she put it down to the stress of planning a wedding and adjusting to newlywed life. Still, Alicia would lie awake at night, listening to Carter's gentle snoring, wondering if they were moving too fast. But love won out, or at least it felt that way. When Alicia discovered she was pregnant, almost a year into their marriage, she took it as a sign that everything was falling into place. In truth, that very moment signaled the unraveling of her fairy tale. Carter's reaction to the pregnancy news was subdued. He smiled, gave her a hug, but Alicia sensed something missing. True excitement, perhaps. "This is great news," he had said, forcing a grin. "We'll start our family, and everything will be perfect." But as the months passed, Alicia was left to attend prenatal classes alone, while Carter claimed he had to work late. He would mutter things like, "I have court cases, Alicia. I can't just skip them." She reasoned that was the price of being married to an up-and-coming lawyer. Meanwhile, Lucy Walters called often, checking in from Ohio. Every time Lucy asked, "Is Carter there with you?" Alicia's pause on the phone spoke volumes. Little did Alicia know that her frequent loneliness wasn't just because Carter was working. He was also finding solace in someone else's arms, a charming young paralegal named Bianca Reed. Bianca Reed entered Carter's life just as Alicia's belly began to show. She was new at the firm, recommended by an old family friend of Carter's father. She had a bright smile, enviable curves, and a natural confidence in the office that made heads turn. She wasn't shy about her ambition to become a lawyer someday. But for now, she was content racking up experience and building her own network. The first time Bianca and Carter worked together, it was late, the office nearly empty, and Carter was reviewing a crucial piece of litigation. Bianca volunteered to stay and help organize the files. He noticed how meticulously she labeled them, how she seemed to anticipate exactly what he needed before he spoke. A simple conversation about a legal brief quickly spiraled into banter about travel hobbies and restaurant recommendations. It started innocently enough. Carter found himself laughing more in Bianca's presence than he had in months. She reminded him of who he had been before the pressures of married life, fatherhood-to-be, and unrelenting professional expectations weighed on him. Her laughter was contagious, and her flirtations were subtle but undeniable. Within a few weeks, Carter was staying late, even when he didn't have important work. He and Bianca would share takeout meals in the break room. They'd confide in each other about family histories, petty insecurities, and workplace dramas. When Alicia texted him, "Are you on your way home?" Carter often left the messages unanswered. He told himself it was harmless, just a little escapism. But deep down, he knew he was crossing lines. Bianca was aware of Carter's marriage, but she found herself drawn to his power, his poise, and the unspoken vulnerability he let slip when he thought no one was looking. She was younger, definitely more carefree, and her optimism about the future was something Carter craved. So their friendship leapt toward intimacy. Nights at the office turned into private dinners in discreet corners of the city, which turned into stolen weekends under the pretense of business trips. Friends at the law firm whispered about the suspicious closeness between Carter and Bianca. "He's a married man," said one junior associate. "He should be ashamed." But nobody dared confront the boss's son. Rumors, however, have a way of circling back, and eventually Alicia heard faint murmurs from Lucy, who heard it through a friend living in LA. Alicia confronted Carter several times, but each time he brushed it off. "Bianca's just a co-worker, Alicia. I'm busy. Don't let your hormones get the best of you." With every denial, Alicia's unease grew. She was pregnant, feeling emotionally fragile, and Carter was slipping further away, increasingly living in Bianca's orbit. Alicia tried her best to focus on her pregnancy doctor's appointments, vitamins, reading, parenting books. Yet she couldn't shake a looming dread that her marriage was in jeopardy. She was right. Alicia's growing suspicion fueled her determination to find proof. One afternoon, while Carter was in the shower, she took a deep breath and opened his phone. They had always respected each other's privacy. Alicia believed trust was paramount in any marriage, but desperation drove her to break this rule. His passcode was his birthday, a sign of how complacent he'd become about hiding secrets. She scrolled through his messages and found exactly what she feared. Text after text between Carter and Bianca told the story of an affair with unguarded explicitness. "I can't stop thinking about last night," Bianca wrote. "I love the way you smell," Carter replied. Alicia's hands trembled as she read messages, scheduling romantic dinners and booking hotel rooms. Her heart pounded so violently that she worried she might faint. She felt her unborn baby move inside her, an unsettling reminder of the life she carried, a child whose father was already entangled with another woman. When Carter emerged from the shower, Alicia confronted him. Tears were streaming down her face. Her voice quivered as she hurled the evidence in his face. For a moment, he was struck dumb. Then came the excuses, Alicia. "It's not what you think. It just happened. I was lonely. I'm under a lot of stress." At that moment, Alicia couldn't handle his excuses. She felt a physical ache in her chest, and the baby kicked again, as if to demand better from a father who was clearly betraying them both. She stormed out of the bathroom, slammed the door, and spent the night in the guest bedroom crying until her eyes felt raw. The following morning, Alicia woke up to Carter's frantic knocking on the guest room door. She braced herself for the usual sweet talk or hollow apology. But what she got was more of the same half-hearted remorse, pledges to change empty words about how he'd never do it again. Alicia wanted to believe him. She still loved him. But the damage was done. Something broke in her that night, and she wasn't sure how to piece it back together. Lucy, always the loyal friend, flew to LA the next week to offer Alicia emotional support. Over cups of herbal tea, Lucy pressed Alicia about her options. "Are you leaving him? Are you staying? You need to think of your baby. You can't keep living like this." Alicia bit her lip, tears threatening again. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "I'm scared to raise this baby alone, but he's driving me insane." Days turned into weeks. Carter promised counseling, offered to cut ties with Bianca. He acted repentant, but Alicia discovered more texts showing that nothing had changed. Each betrayal hollowed Alicia out. She told Carter to leave, but he refused, insisting that he could fix this. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting, and Alicia felt her own health suffering. Yet the final straw hadn't arrived until Alicia found out about the baby shower. One morning, Alicia received a call from an unrecognized number. When she picked up the voice on the line was that of Bianca's sister, Carmen Reed, who had always looked out for her younger sibling, sometimes with a misguided sense of loyalty. Carmen sounded hesitant, almost guilty. "Alicia, I'm sorry to bother you," she said awkwardly, "but I think you should know something. Bianca is pregnant." Pregnant. The word echoed in Alicia's mind like a cannon shot. The full implications rattled her. Carter's mistress pregnant. She clutched her stomach protectively, her own baby nearly 6 months along. "I'm calling because Bianca wants Carter to attend her baby shower," Carmen continued. "She's mailed invitations to family and close friends and, well, I don't think you'd appreciate it, but she asked me to confirm. She said, Carter promised to come. Alicia's emotions spun out of control. At first she fell silent, tears burning her eyes. Then she began to chuckle, a bitter, humorless sound. The situation was so absurd, it almost felt like a twisted joke. Carter fathering 2 babies at once, one in his marriage, one in an affair. Carmen cleared her throat. Look, Alicia, I'm not trying to hurt you, but I think you should know what's going on. I don't approve of what Bianca has done. But she's my sister, and I'm in a tough spot. Alicia exhaled, tried to calm her shaking hands. Thank you for calling, she managed, then ended the conversation. As she stared at her phone, Alicia's anger crystallized into determination. She wasn't going to let Carter slink out of the house with some lie about a business meeting. If he was going to brazenly attend his mistress's baby shower, he would have to face her. And she decided then and there that she would attend 2 uninvited. Bianca's baby shower was held at a charming countryside venue in the hills above Los Angeles, an elegant rustic barn with sweeping views of vineyards and rolling fields. The decorations were a tasteful blend of soft pastel balloons with lavish floral arrangements and vintage furniture. Through the giant barn doors, you could see tables laden with gourmet pastries and meticulously wrapped gifts. It was the kind of affair that Instagram influencers would pay good money to feature. Alicia arrived wearing a loose-fitting but elegant dress that draped over her pregnant belly. She had told no one she was coming, not even Lucy. She needed to do this alone to see with her own eyes just how far the betrayal extended. Her heart raced as she made her way up the gravel path. She spotted Carter's car in the makeshift parking lot, her nerves twisting into knots. She swallowed hard, praying that her resolve wouldn't shatter. Music played inside a soft, cheery tune that might have felt comforting under other circumstances. The guests were mostly Bianca's family and friends, plus a few co-workers from the law firm. Alicia recognized a few familiar faces associates who worked under Carter, smirking at her presence. A few gasped, but nobody dared to stop her. Then she saw Carter and Bianca near the front, laughing about something as they greeted a guest. Bianca looked radiant in a flowing, peach-colored dress that showcased her belly. Carter's hand rested on the small of Bianca's back the same way he used to touch Alicia when they were dating. Alicia felt a visceral sting, as though her heart was being crushed in a vice. Initially, Carter didn't notice Alicia. He was preoccupied with introducing Bianca to a senior partner from the firm. But once he turned around, their eyes locked. For a split second, horror flickered across Carter's face. He rushed toward Alicia, trying to usher her out before she made a scene. "What are you doing here?" he hissed under his breath, his voice tinged with panic. "Please, you shouldn't be here." Before Alicia could respond, Bianca sauntered over, curiosity morphing into alarm as she realized who had shown up. "You have a lot of nerve," she said to Alicia, though she tried to maintain a veneer of grace in front of her guests. Then, in a softer voice, dripping with condescension, "Maybe we can talk. Outside." Alicia felt a lifetime of anger and betrayal welling inside her. She glanced around and saw the crowd gawking. She spoke in a steady voice that shocked even herself. "Why don't we talk right here? After all, you invited the father of my child. I assume you don't mind having me around, too." A hush settled over the guests. Some of Bianca's relatives shot each other worried glances. Carmen Reed stood in a corner, pale with guilt. The tension was electric. Carter tried again to corral Alicia by the arm. but she pulled away. "Don't touch me," she snarled. "I came to see exactly what I've suspected all along. You've been lying to me for months. Carter, and here you are, celebrating a baby you're having with another woman." Bianca, for her part, looked mortified. She tried to salvage the event by signaling the DJ to raise the music, but it was too late. The hush among the guests had turned into a collective recoil nobody wanted to step in. It was a train wreck in slow motion. Finally, Carter's temper snapped. "You're making a scene," he shouted, voice echoing across the barn. He reached for Alicia's arm again, more forcefully this time, as if to drag her outside and end this spectacle. Alicia's body tensed, and she tried to free herself. "Let go of me." Then, in a moment that would replay in Alicia's nightmares for weeks to come, Carter shoved her. Not just a nudge, he pushed her away with enough force that she stumbled backward, nearly colliding with a table of pastel-frosted cupcakes. A collective gasp tore through the onlookers. Some guests rushed forward to help Alicia regain her balance, but the damage was done. She felt the sharp pain in her back from the abrupt movement. Tears of shock and fury welled in her eyes. She'd never thought Carter would harm her physically, especially not while she was pregnant. Carter's eyes widened, as though realizing the weight of what he had done. Alicia steadied herself, both hands protectively on her belly, fighting back tears. I didn't mean," Carter stammered, but the words died in his throat. Bianca stood frozen, unsure whether to comfort Alicia or side with Carter. The crowd erupted in hushed conversations and speculation. Carmen Reed finally rushed to Alicia's side, but Alicia waved her away. She felt humiliated, furious, and heartbreakingly alone. "Stay away from me," Alicia managed, her voice trembling. Then she turned and stormed out of the barn, leaving stunned guests and a wave of uneasy murmurs behind her. She didn't look back. She couldn't bear to face the man who had just shattered her last shred of trust. Word of the scandal at the baby shower spread quickly. A few of Bianca's friends, outraged by what they witnessed, posted cryptic messages on social media. Some men have zero shame. Pregnancy. Drama. Unbelievable. Within hours, Lucy Walters in Ohio found out what happened and called Alicia in tears, begging her to press charges or at least file a restraining order. Alicia refused to answer calls from everyone, at first overwhelmed by the magnitude of the betrayal. But eventually, Alicia confided in Lucy, describing the humiliating moment when Carter shoved her. "I'm fine, physically," she said, her voice cracking. "The baby's fine. I went to the doctor just to be sure." Lucy breathed a sigh of relief, but remained livid at Carter's behavior. "You deserve better," Lucy kept repeating. "He's not the man you married." Meanwhile, Carter tried to do damage control. He texted Alicia incessantly. "Alicia, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. I lost my temper. You know I'd never hurt you or the baby. Please don't leave me, we can work this out." Alicia refused to respond. She felt numb, empty, and unable to process that the man she once adored could harm her. She spent her days curled up on the sofa, replaying the moment in her mind. She scheduled sessions with a therapist to untangle her conflicting emotions: anger, sadness, fear. Carter's parents got wind of the altercation too. His mother, Gloria Dawson, was horrified. She reached out to Alicia, begging her not to involve the police and promising that Carter's father would ensure Alicia was taken care of financially. It was a classic damage control move, and Alicia felt insulted by the implicit bribe. She wanted accountability, not hush money. Then, as if the situation weren't complicated enough, Alicia received a phone call from an unexpected source. Bianca. Her voice was trembling and apologetic. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I never expected Carter to react that way," Bianca said. "This is my baby shower, and it turned into a nightmare. I didn't want to hurt you like that." Alicia listened in stunned silence. Could Bianca actually be apologizing? Or was she simply trying to play innocent? Bianca continued, "I'm not some monster, Alicia. Carter told me your marriage was essentially over, that you were just roommates. I believed him. I'm not justifying my actions, but I need you to know I wasn't trying to ruin your life. I'm pregnant too, and I want what's best for my child." Alicia felt fury surging in her again, but she forced herself to remain calm. "If you cared about what's best for your child," she said quietly, "you would have realized that fathering 2 babies at once is not exactly stable. And if you believed Carter when he said our marriage was over, you were naive. Or maybe you just didn't care." Bianca let out a shaky breath. "I can't change what happened, but I want you to know I'm leaving Los Angeles. I'm moving back with my family in San Diego. This scandal is too big for me to handle here. I don't want my baby to be born into this mess." Surprisingly, Alicia felt a faint sense of relief. At least Bianca was removing herself from Carter's direct orbit. But the damage was done, and Alicia had to figure out her own life. "I appreciate the apology," she said flatly, ending the call. She doubted she'd ever speak to Bianca again. Just as Alicia was gearing up to distance herself from Carter. Permanently, she received an unexpected notice in the mail, a summons for a family court hearing. Confused, she immediately called Lucy, who listened in disbelief. The summons stated that Carter was petitioning for a hearing to discuss custody and visitation rights of both unborn children. "It's insane," Alicia fumed, pacing her living room. "He physically harmed me, and now he has the nerve to demand a hearing about custody before the baby is even born." Lucy was livid on Alicia's behalf. "He's probably doing preemptive damage control. He knows you might file domestic violence charges or limit his access to the baby once it's born. He's trying to paint you as the emotional one so he can hold on to some parental rights." That night, Alicia wrestled with insomnia. She felt torn. On one hand, she didn't want to deprive her child of a father if Carter could somehow redeem himself. On the other, she wanted to protect her baby from a man who had physically harmed her while pregnant. Ironically, Carter's father, Harold Dawson, was a prominent lawyer in family law. He reached out, offering to mediate, but Alicia refused. She suspected the hearing was a tactic orchestrated by the Dawson family to keep everything under their control. Feeling cornered, Alicia hired her own attorney, a reputable woman named Teresa Grant, who had built a career advocating for domestic abuse survivors. Teresa was enraged when she heard Alicia's story. "We can countersue for a protective order," she said. "We can also document everything that happened at the baby shower." Alicia was hesitant. "I don't want an ugly court battle," she said softly, hand on her belly. "I just want to live in peace." Teresa placed a gentle hand on Alicia's shoulder. "Sometimes the only way to get peace is to fight for it." So Alicia steeled herself for the legal confrontation looming. The hearing was set for the following week, a date that made Alicia's heart pound every time she thought about it. She knew she'd have to see Carter in court, face the paternal claims he was making, and relive the trauma of the baby shower scene. She wasn't sure she had the emotional stamina, but Lucy encouraged her. "You can do this," Lucy said. "You have to do this for you and your baby." What Alicia didn't know was that fate was about to add an even bigger twist To the drama, two tiny new arrivals who would upend the entire narrative in a way no one could have predicted. In the days leading up to the court hearing, Alicia tried to keep her stress levels down for the baby's sake. She practiced mindfulness exercises, took gentle walks, and tried to eat nutrient-rich foods. The tension, however, was inescapable. Meanwhile, Lucy, who was still in Ohio, called almost daily. Each time she pressed Alicia to stay strong. Don't forget, Lucy reminded her, Carter will try to manipulate the situation. Show the judge you're prepared. Focus on the facts, his affair, his violence, your willingness to co-parent if he respects boundaries. The morning of the hearing arrived. Alicia dressed in a simple black maternity dress and sat in Teresa Grant's office, reviewing last-minute details. Her nerves felt like they were on fire. When they arrived at the courthouse, Alicia's stomach churned upon seeing Carter's sleek sedan parked outside. She took a deep breath and walked inside, refusing to be intimidated. After a brief wait, both parties were called into a modest courtroom with pew-like benches and fluorescent lights. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Regina Martin, observed them with a practiced neutrality. Carter sat at one table with his father, Harold Dawson, as legal counsel. Alicia and Teresa took seats at the opposite table. Harold Dawson began with a spiel about how Carter was deeply concerned about the well-being of his unborn child, claiming Alicia had become emotionally volatile and uncooperative. Alicia's mouth tightened, a new wave of anger stirring in her chest. She watched Carter remain silent, wearing a suit that tried to evoke respectability. Teresa countered by detailing the baby shower incident. She spoke of Alicia's documented hospital visit afterward. Thankfully, Alicia and the baby were unhurt. Teresa also submitted witness statements from a few guests who had seen Carter shove Alicia. Judge Martin's face was impassive, but Alicia sensed the judge's disapproval at hearing about violence against a pregnant woman. She asked direct questions of Carter. Is it true you engaged in a physical altercation with your wife at another woman's baby shower? Carter squirmed his carefully rehearsed lines, struggling to come out smoothly. I wouldn't call it an altercation. Your Honor, I was trying to de-escalate a situation and things got out of hand. Judge Martin pressed further, unimpressed. De-escalate by pushing your pregnant wife. Carter lowered his gaze. It was a mistake. I lost my temper. I am deeply remorseful. Just then the courtroom doors swung open. A bailiff tried to stop the commotion, but an older woman rushed in, shouting, Your Honor, you need to see this. She was holding a car seat. Beside her stood Bianca Reed, pale and anxious, carrying a car seat of her own. Inside each car seat was a newborn, two tiny infants, both fussing softly. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Judge Martin demanded order. Who are you, ma'am? And why are you interrupting this hearing? The older woman introduced herself as Angela Reed, Bianca's mother. These are Bianca's babies, Your Honor. Twin boys, born prematurely last night. And Carter Dawson is listed as the father. She glared at Carter. We came to find him because he needs to see the consequences of his actions. Alicia felt her stomach drop as she watched Carter's face go pale. He gawked at the infants, clearly not expecting them to be born yet. He stumbled out of his seat, eyes locked on the newborns. The entire courtroom broke into hushed murmurs. Bianca stood there, tears in her eyes, still obviously exhausted from giving birth. They're premature, she said, addressing the judge. They need medical support. But my mother insisted on coming here to show Carter. Judge Martin banged her gavel, calling for silence. Let me get this straight. You are Ms. Bianca Reed and you have twin boys you claim are fathered by Mr. Dawson, who is simultaneously in court to address custody issues regarding his wife's unborn child." Bianca nodded, eyes downcast. Alicia simply stared, stunned beyond words. She felt like she was trapped in a surreal reality show. Harold Dawson scrambled to do damage control. He stood, smoothing his suit jacket. "Your Honor, we were unaware the children had been born. We believe a paternity test is necessary to Angela Reed cut him off. There's no need for a test." Carter signed an acknowledgement of paternity form when Bianca was admitted. "The hospital has it on record." Carter looked blindsided. He finally found his voice. "They gave me a bunch of papers while Bianca was in labor. I didn't know Judge Martin banged her gavel again, the crack echoing. Enough, Ms. Reed, Ms. Marshall. Both of you are here due to Mr. Dawson. We need to proceed with order." The next hour in the courtroom was a whirlwind. Judge Martin decided that since all parties were present, they would address both the custody petition Carter filed for Alicia's unborn child and this new situation involving Bianca's newborn twins. Bianca, still looking as though she should be in a hospital bed, explained through tears that the twins were born at just 34 weeks. "They're stable, but they need careful monitoring," she said. "I wasn't trying to ambush Carter. My mother insisted we come." Angela Reed nodded vigorously, glaring at Carter and Harold Dawson. Carter's father tried to steer the conversation toward a reasonable arrangement, but every time he spoke, Judge Martin's frown deepened. "Your client and son has fathered 2 sets of children simultaneously, and there's a documented incident of physical violence against a pregnant partner. There is nothing reasonable about this situation, Mr. Dawson." Teresa Grant took her turn, explaining Alicia's position. "My client has no desire to restrict a loving father from being in her child's life. However, given Mr. Dawson's violence and infidelity, we request a protective order and supervised visitation for him, pending a thorough review by Child Protective Services. We also want to ensure Ms. Marshall's medical care is covered and that child support is arranged properly." Judge Martin listened intently, asking pointed questions. Carter tried to defend himself by claiming the push was an accident. He also expressed concern for Bianca and the twins, insisting he would do right by them, though his voice trembled under the judge's scrutiny. Angela Reed stepped up, seething with righteous fury. She described how Carter had made promises to Bianca, swearing he would leave Alicia after the baby was born. Carter's head dropped as Angela's words hung in the sterile air. Alicia, meanwhile, felt an acute sorrow. So he had planned to leave her all along once his mistress had a baby. When it was Bianca's turn to speak, she offered a sobering perspective. "I know what we did was wrong," she said in a trembling voice. "I'm not here to defend our affair. But these twins are innocent. They need a father who won't abandon them at the first sign of difficulty. The stress of everything probably contributed to my premature labor." The entire time, Alicia tried to maintain her composure. She felt a surge of empathy for Bianca's babies. They had no choice in this chaos. She also felt heartbreak for her own unborn child, caught in the middle of a fractured family. All eyes turned to Alicia as Judge Martin inquired about her stance. In a clear, steady voice, Alicia said, "I'm here today for the well-being of my child. I won't deny Carter's paternity if he truly wants to be a father, but I can't expose myself or my baby to violence. I'm requesting the court's protection." A few rows behind them, the gallery was packed. Teresa had brought witnesses from the baby shower to corroborate the assault on Alicia. Their testimonies left no doubt that Carter had indeed pushed her, whether intentionally or not. The last person to speak was Lucy Walters, who had flown in that morning. She delivered a heartfelt statement about Alicia's character, describing her as a loyal, kind person who deserved better than the betrayal she'd received. By the end of the hearing, Carter slumped in his seat, his world spiraling out of control. Bianca stood with tears in her eyes, cradling her premature infant. Another baby squirmed in Angela Reed's arms. Alicia remained stoic, her attorney's hand on her shoulder. Judge Martin cleared her throat, scanning the faces before her. "This is one of the more complicated family law matters I've encountered. Mr. Dawson, your actions have put 2 women and 3 children in jeopardy. First and foremost, the physical safety of Miss Marshall and her unborn child must be assured." She turned to address Alicia directly. "Miss Marshall, I'm granting you an emergency protective order. Mr. Dawson is to maintain 0 physical contact with you until further review, and any communication regarding your child must go through your attorney." "Do you understand?" Alicia nodded, relief and sorrow mingling in her chest. "Yes, Your Honor." Turning to Carter, the judge continued, "You will undergo anger management counseling, and any visitation with your child once born shall be supervised. Regarding the twin infants Ms. Reed has presented to this court, I want a paternity confirmation, although I acknowledge Mr. Dawson signed an acknowledgement at the hospital. If confirmed, custody and visitation arrangements will similarly require supervision until I am satisfied you are not a danger. Additionally, child support will be determined once paternity is established." Bianca wiped her eyes, nodding weakly. She looked exhausted, but there was relief that at least her baby's care was being considered. Angela Reed shot Carter a final scathing look, as if to say, "We wouldn't be here if not for you." Harold Dawson tried to protest the terms, but Judge Martin cut him off sternly. "Your client is fortunate he wasn't taken into custody for assault on a pregnant woman. The evidence is overwhelming. If you want to fight these rulings, we can schedule a further hearing, but as of now, this is the court's decision." A hushed silence settled on the room as Judge Martin concluded, "We will reconvene in 6 weeks for a follow-up hearing to assess compliance with these orders. Court is adjourned." She banged her gavel, and the tension in the room finally broke. Carter's father began whispering to him, but Carter looked too stunned to respond. Alicia exhaled slowly, feeling an unfamiliar blend of triumph and sadness. There were no real winners here. Just a man who had destroyed the trust of 2 women, fathered 3 children almost simultaneously, and ended up with the scrutiny of the law on him. But Alicia had stood up for herself, and she was determined to continue doing so. Bianca approached Alicia hesitantly, newborn in hand. She whispered, "I'm sorry again. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I do hope we can avoid more drama for the sake of the kids." Alicia looked at the infant who was so small his tiny fist looked no bigger than a plum. She felt a pang in her chest, a maternal empathy for another mother in crisis. But she also remembered the betrayal, the lies. "I hope you and your babies stay safe," she said quietly, then walked away. Lucy followed, placing a comforting arm around Alicia's shoulders. Outside the courthouse, the sun felt too bright, the air too harsh. But for the first time in a long while, Alicia felt a small measure of hope. She had survived the baby shower assault, confronted Carter in court, and discovered the shocking truth of the twins. Now she had a legal framework to protect herself and her child. In the weeks that followed, Alicia settled into a new normal. She moved out of the downtown apartment she'd shared with Carter, finding a small but cozy place near Lucy's cousin, who lived in LA. She'd changed her phone number to avoid Carter's harassing calls. Financially, she relied on her interior design work and a small emergency fund she'd saved. The protective order allowed her some peace of mind, though she remained vigilant. Carter, meanwhile, started mandatory anger management classes. He tried to contact Alicia through mutual friends, but Teresa Grant shut that down swiftly. The court had made it clear that all communication had to go through legal channels. Bianca's twins were placed in neonatal care for a few extra days before being released. She moved back to San Diego with her mother, away from the rumor mill in Los Angeles. Carter arranged to visit the twins under supervision at a neutral facility, though it was more for show than genuine paternal devotion. The entire spectacle took a toll on his professional life. The law firm, under public scrutiny, put him on indefinite leave. Co-workers whispered about the day he pushed his pregnant wife at his mistress's baby shower. Some voiced sympathy for Alicia, others quietly criticized Bianca. But Carter bore the brunt of the shame. Lucy stayed in LA for another week, helping Alicia get organized. One evening they sat in Alicia's new living room, sipping tea. Lucy asked gently, "How are you feeling about everything?" Alicia rubbed her swollen belly, feeling her baby's gentle kicks. Sad, angry, sometimes relieved. It's a mix of emotions every day. But I'm trying to focus on the baby's future, on creating a safe, loving environment. Lucy nodded. "You'll be an amazing mother." "Don't forget that." Alicia managed a small smile. "Thank you." The baby was due in a few months, and Alicia contemplated whether she wanted Carter in the delivery room. For now, she was content with the protective order. She could revisit that decision closer to her due date. Slowly, Alicia felt herself healing. She leaned on therapy sessions, found solace in supportive friends, and started accepting that her dream of a happy family with Carter was gone. She began to envision a life where she was a single mother, raising a child in a stable home, free from constant betrayal and conflict. It wasn't the life she had planned, but it was one she could embrace with courage. 2 months later, Alicia had just returned from a prenatal checkup when she found Carter sitting in the lobby of her new building. Her heart lurched at the sight of him. He looked worn, dark circles under his eyes, hair unkempt. She instinctively placed a hand over her belly. She also recalled the protective order, which explicitly forbade him from coming near her residence. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, stepping back. A pang of fear flared in her chest. "You're violating the order." Carter rose slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I know. I'm sorry," he said, voice strained. "I just needed to see you, to apologize, to talk. I've been in therapy. I'm getting help for my anger." Alicia's pulse quickened. She glanced around, hoping a neighbor or building security might step in if this went badly. "You should have gone through Teresa. This isn't okay." He nodded, eyes downcast. "I know. I messed up. I'm leaving LA. I wanted to tell you in person." His gaze flicked to her belly. "I also wanted to see if you needed anything before I go. Money, baby supplies, anything." Alicia swallowed hard. She noticed a glint of sincerity in his eyes, different from before. "You haven't changed that fast, Carter. But if you're truly remorseful, you'd respect the court orders. You'd do the right thing financially and legally." He fiddled with the handle of his briefcase. "I'm going to stay with a cousin in San Francisco, do my therapy there, and figure out how to be a better father. I'm not asking for us to get back together. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." Alicia felt tears prick her eyes. She believed he was in genuine pain, but she also remembered that remorse often comes too late. If you want to be a good father, stay away until you're ready to be safe around me and the baby. She paused, her voice trembling, and talk to my lawyer about child support. Carter lowered his head, nodded. I will. Take care of yourself, Alicia. He walked out, shoulders slumped. Alicia felt a rush of mixed emotions. Relief, sadness, hope. She wasn't sure if Carter was truly on a path to redemption, or if this was another performance. Either way, she was resolute that her priority was her child's well-being. Weeks turned into months. Alicia inched closer to her due date, investing her energy into preparing a nursery. Her friend Lucy visited again, helping set up a crib and stock up on diapers. They hung soft yellow curtains by the window, letting in a warm glow. Each baby blanket folded neatly in the dresser reminded Alicia that despite the chaos, there was a precious new life coming soon. Meanwhile, Alicia's attorney confirmed that Carter had begun making monthly payments into an escrow account for child support. He occasionally sent updates on his therapy sessions through Harold Dawson, but Alicia tried to avoid emotional entanglements. She kept her boundaries firm. Bianca occasionally texted Alicia short updates about the twins' health. The babies were growing stronger, hitting milestones, and Alicia found herself somewhat relieved to know they were okay. There was no longer hostility in Bianca's messages, just two women who'd been hurt by the same man, forging a fragile sense of civility. One morning, Alicia woke up with contractions. She called Lucy, who arrived 20 minutes later, loaded Alicia into her car, and sped to the hospital. Despite the rush, Alicia felt an undercurrent of calm. She'd been waiting for this moment, a new life, a new direction, free from the shadows of betrayal. 12 hours later, Alicia gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Clara Rose Marshall. Holding Clara in her arms, Alicia wept tears of pure joy. A wave of protective love surged through her, overshadowing every heartbreak she'd endured. Lucy cut the umbilical cord, tears of pride shining in her eyes. Teresa visited the next day, bringing flowers and a stuffed bunny. "She's perfect," Teresa cooed, admiring the sleeping infant. Alicia smiled, gazing at her daughter with wonder. "Perfect," she whispered. The months after Clara's birth unfolded like a quiet dawn after a long, stormy night. Alicia nestled into the rhythm of single motherhood, finding solace in the small but extraordinary moments that filled her days. Sleepless nights were softened by Clara's warm breath against her skin, and the gentle curve of her daughter's first smile lit a flame in Alicia's soul that could never be extinguished. She paused her larger interior design contracts and focused on small freelance gigs that allowed her to work from home. With Lucy's help, before she returned to Ohio, Alicia had turned her small apartment into a haven, soft pastel tones, cushioned corners, and the faint scent of lavender lingering in the air. It wasn't the life she had once imagined, but it was a life she now embraced fully. Carter remained in San Francisco, honoring the boundaries outlined in the court's orders. He sent occasional letters, some apologetic, others reflective. Alicia read them sometimes aloud during therapy sessions, but rarely responded. The emotions they stirred were complicated. He had shattered her world, but he was still Clara's father. And Alicia had no intention of hiding that from her daughter, only shielding her from harm. After consulting with Teresa and her therapist, Alicia agreed that when Clara was older, and if Carter had shown consistency in his therapy and personal growth, a supervised visit could be considered. But Alicia made one thing clear: My daughter's safety and well-being come before anything else. Bianca, now living quietly in San Diego with her mother and the twins, resumed her paralegal studies online. She messaged Alicia a few times, brief updates, soft-toned and full of regret. The anger between them had ebbed, replaced by a cautious truce. They both bore the scars of Carter's betrayal, but they also shared a reluctant bond as mothers navigating new fractured realities. The twins were reported to be thriving, chubby, healthy and alert. Alicia sent a congratulatory message when they turned 6 months. Bianca replied with a photo, 2 gummy smiles staring back at the camera. Alicia stared at it for a long time, her emotions a blend of sadness, closure, and strange peace. Lucy had eventually returned to Ohio, but the daily calls never stopped. She became Alicia's lifeline from afar, sending silly memes, voice messages filled with encouragement and care packages of herbal teas and onesies. "You're doing incredible," Lucy often said. "You've done more than survive. You've grown." One evening, Alicia stood by the window. Clara nestled against her chest. The city outside pulsed with life, but inside there was stillness, peace. She watched the last traces of a golden sunset slip beneath the rooftops, her thoughts drifting back to the day she had walked into Bianca's baby shower. The humiliation, the anger, the violence, it had once defined her story, but not anymore. Now it was Clara's tiny hands that guided her forward. Every giggle, every midnight feeding, every milestone was a reminder of how far Alicia had come. She no longer felt broken. She felt rebuilt, stitched back together with resilience, clarity, and love. Occasionally she would glance at the unopened letters Carter continued to send, stored in a shoebox beneath her bed. Maybe one day Clara would read them. Maybe one day there would be understanding. But not yet. As the weeks rolled into seasons, Alicia found joy in the unexpected, a new client who appreciated her minimalist touch. A book club formed by local mums. Clara's first word. Mama spoken with such unfiltered joy, it brought Alicia to her knees in tears. Her heart healed in slow, steady beats, soothed by every little proof that life could bloom from brokenness. On Clara's first birthday, Alicia hosted a small gathering in a sunlit park. Balloons, swaying gently in the breeze. Cupcakes in pastel shades after of new friends who had become family. Lucy flew in. Bianca sent a quiet birthday message. Carter did not attend. He wasn't ready, and Alicia didn't feel guilty about that anymore. She had learned something invaluable. Closure doesn't always come in the form of reconciliation. Sometimes it's choosing yourself, choosing peace, choosing to look ahead instead of behind. As Alicia laid Clara down that night, the baby's tiny fingers clutched her mother's shirt. Alicia kissed her forehead, whispering a vow only they would ever hear. You'll never have to wonder if you're loved. The scars of betrayal remained, yes, but they were no longer open wounds. They were part of the landscape of a life rebuilt with strength. And in the heart of that landscape, Alicia had carved out a new beginning. One full of promise and anchored by the most important truth she had ever known. She was enough, and Clara, her beautiful daughter, would grow up in a home filled not with drama or pain, but with unwavering, unconditional love. Sometimes life's harshest twists become the stepping stones to newfound strength. Alicia's journey reminds us that even the most devastating betrayal cannot extinguish the power of hope. She faced the humiliation of discovering her husband's double life survived the horrifying moment he pushed her during a baby shower, and courageously stood up in court when her world was crumbling. Yet through it all, she held fast to her dreams of becoming a loving parent, and she turned those dreams into a reality. Clara was born into adversity, but surrounded by a mother's unwavering devotion. The court battled the broken trust, the complicated webs of relationships, all gave Alicia the clarity she needed to rebuild. And rebuild she did. If you found Alicia's journey inspiring, please like this video, share it with anyone who needs to hear a message of resilience, and subscribe for more powerful stories that prove hope can triumph over heartbreak.